Good morning, dear students. Welcome back after a term 1. Now we will be beginning with our topics of term 2. So to begin with, we will start with chapter number 1, that is crop production and management. As you already know that we have completed half of the chapter in the term 1. Now in the term 2, we will begin with the topic that is crop rotation and how leguminous plants increase fertility of the soil. As we study crop rotation, what is crop rotation? It is a pre-planned rotation of different type of crops in a field in different years by the farmer. That is called as crop rotation. For example, in 1 year, the farmer is sowing, the first year, the farmer is sowing seed, wheat. That is a cereal crop. But in the coming year, in the next year, the farmer will not sow the wheat seeds again in the field. What he will select? He will select some leguminous plants, some leguminous crops. And it is selected in a pre-planned way by a farmer so that the nutrients of the soil can be enriched. So that is called as crop rotation. And this crop rotation helps in replenishing the nutrients of the soil which have been absorbed by the crop plants. It helps in the replenishment of all the nutrients that is being absorbed by the crop plants. So basically the crop rotation is done for replenishment of the essential nutrients of the soil. For example, the wheat is grown in the field. The wheat will absorb a lot of nitrogen from the field, from the soil. So what will happen? After the wheat crop is harvested, what will you expect? A less amount of nitrogen in the field. So in order to enhance the nitrogen again into the soil, what the farmer is going to do? The farmer is not going to sow the wheat crop again in the next season. What he will grow the next year? He will grow some leguminous crops next year so that the nitrogen content can again be replenished in the soil. Now how the leguminous crops helps in the replenishment of nitrogen content? Helps in the increase of the fertility of the soil. The leguminous crops, the leguminous plants, for example, pea. Pea is a leguminous crop. See the diagram here. In this diagram, the root of the pea plant is having some nodules in it. And these nodules helps, they are acting as a home of the bacteria. And that bacteria helps into the fixation of atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. They help in replenishment of the nitrogen of the soil. So that is how the nitrogen fixing bacteria is helping to replenish the nitrogen of the soil. And that is how leguminous plants are helping in the replenishment of nitrogen. And this is done by the help of this process that is called as nitrogen fixation. What is nitrogen fixation? As you all know, the large amount of nitrogen is present in the atmosphere. But plants are not able to take that nitrogen directly in its elemental form. So this nitrogen has to be converted into compounds of nitrogen, nitrites and nitrates, before being absorbed by the roots of the plant. So this conversion of nitrogen, elemental nitrogen into nitrites and nitrates, it is done by this bacteria which is present into the nodules of the root of leguminous plants. So they are acting as a home for the bacteria. These root nodules are acting as a home. Now this bacteria lives in the symbiotic association with the roots of leguminous plants. That means the bacteria is helping the plant and the plant is helping the bacteria. They both are in a symbiotic association, and bacteria is helping by giving the nitrogen to the plants, and the plant is helping by giving food and shelter to the bacteria. So that is how they are in a symbiotic association with one another. So that is how the nitrogen fixation can be done by some bacteria and some blue-green algae, which helps in replenishing the nitrogen content of the soil. So that is the main purpose of crop rotations, to choose one cereal crop and then in the another season choose one leguminous crops, so that the nutrients that are being absorbed in the first year can be replenished back again into the soil by the leguminous plants, with the help of leguminous plants. So that is the main aim of choosing our leguminous crops, and that is how our leguminous crops increases the fertility of the soil. So I hope you all have understood this session properly. Role of leguminous plants in increasing the nitrogen content of the soil. Leguminous plants like peas, soya beans, they have the ability to fix the gaseous nitrogen into nitrogenous compounds, which reduces the requirement of nitrogen fertilizer for plants. Leguminous plants have root nodules on the roots that can inhabit the bacteria called as rhizobium, which fixes the gaseous nitrogen into compounds of nitrogen, that is nitrites and nitrates. Crop rotation. Some places are suitable for cultivation only for only few crops. Like for example in India, rice is grown in many regions which are having very high rainfall rate, and it rains throughout the year. In those regions, the farmers used to sow rice only, even in Kharif and Rabi, both the seasons. So this leads to reduction in availability of nutrients, but growing different crops can retain the nutrients of the soil. There are plants which are home to microorganisms that converts atmospheric nitrogen into compounds of nitrogen. Leguminous plants have root nodules which are home to bacteria called as rhizobium. These bacteria depend on plants for food, and in exchange they convert atmospheric nitrogen into compounds of nitrogen, and thus plants and bacteria forms a symbiotic relationship. Some nutrients get absorbed by the plants and rest mixes with the soil. Gram, groundnut, these are examples of leguminous plants. When a different crop is grown after the leguminous crop grown in one season, excessive nutrients which get mixed in the soil are utilized by the other crop. Cultivation of different crops in different seasons is known as crop rotation. Crop rotation results in increment of soil fertility.